Okay, so today I want to go over the difference between refined and unrefined carbs and how it could be potentially impacting your fat loss and weight loss journey essentially. So I'm Nathan, health and fitness coach for executive entrepreneurs, South Asian executive entrepreneurs specifically, and I make these videos so you can take some of the information away and hopefully apply it to help you in your journey, and this is my current physique today. So first I want to touch on what are refined carbs. So refined carbs are basically carbohydrates that's gone through a manufacturing process essentially. So a lot of the natural vitamins, minerals and nutrients have been taken away. So it's just a starchy part that's left, right? And what happens when we eat refined carbs is it causes a increase in blood sugar levels, which then releases a lot of insulin into the body. Okay, so when there's a lot of insulin released into the body, what that means is it signals to your cells to take in glucose. Glucose is what we use for energy, to do things like exercise, to do cognitive function, to just go about our day-to-day life, okay? It can either signal to use that glucose for energy, or it can signal it to store it as glycogen in our muscles or liver, so basically for later use, okay? Now, if these glycogen stores are full, then what will happen is that glucose will be stored as fat. So that's something to keep in mind. And another thing is, having high insulin levels all the time, it reduces lipolysis, and lipolysis is the body's process of breaking down fat stores for energy instead. So if we're constantly spiking our insulin levels, then what happens is our body minimizes the time it spends breaking down fat stores for energy. Something to keep in mind, okay? So we don't want to be constantly spiking our insulin levels too high. Now, some common examples of refined carbs, I'll just go over them with you now. So white bread, because it's made from refined white flour. We've got pastries and cakes, which is often made from white flour and is very high in sugar. We've got sugary cereals, which is a killer, bro. If you're still having Cocoa Pops, put that shit in the bin. Processed cereals are low in fiber and very high in sugar. White rice has basically had the germ, the husk, the bran, those nutrients removed. We have pasta, which is especially made from wheat flour as well. And then we have soda and sweetened beverages as well. So there's a lot of high amounts of added sugars and sweeteners, and it doesn't have much fiber in it either. And of course we've got chocolates, sweets and all that, and that's just high in refined sugars as well. Now that's examples of refined carbs and how that impacts your body. And now we want to talk about what are unrefined carbs, right? So unrefined carbs, also known as whole carbs, are basically carbohydrates that have maintained a lot, if not all, of the natural structures within it. The fiber-rich bran, the grain, the nutrient-dense germ, and the starchy endosperm are all stored within that unrefined carbohydrate, okay? And these carbohydrates are digested so much more slower, right? And it doesn't lead to as much of a spike in insulin. So common examples of unrefined carbs are whole grains like brown rice, whole wheat bread, quinoa, oats and barley. We've got vegetables like non-starchy ones, especially like broccoli, spinach, bell peppers, legumes like beans, lentils, chickpeas. We've got fruits, apples, berries, oranges, which contain natural sugars and fiber, and of course tubers, so basically sweet potatoes, yams and other root vegetables, right? If you want to look at this image here, right, you can see the difference between what happens when we have a high glycemic index, that's basically a lot of the refined carbs, and low glycemic index, which is a lot of the unrefined carbs, okay? So when we have that high GI, the refined carbs, our blood sugar levels increase really, really high, spike really, really fast. So as we know, that releases insulin, decreases the time that we spend in lipolysis or burning fat, and of course it leads to a faster and bigger crash. Now what happens is, when you get to the bottom of that spike, you are much more likely to feel hungrier, you want to eat more food, and you get that rush again to keep going back, and the energy levels, your mood is way less stable, alright? Then we compare to unrefined carbs and things that are a low glycemic index. You can see the blood sugar spike is a lot less, right? It's a lot more stable. It doesn't give you that big spike followed by a massive crash, and I've experienced this myself 100%, right? I used to eat cereals like, what is it, the muesli with all that chocolate in there and all that honey and granola, bro. That was literally like, them massive tranquilizer darts that you can get. It literally felt like I was tranquilizing myself. If you mush that up, right, and you mix it and you put it into a little dart and you shoot a bear, that bear will go down. That is what cereal is doing to you. I'm not even exaggerating, because when I've had that cereal after a period of time off, I realise how fast I get knocked out. Like, it's just taking me out, right? So try it. Honestly, have a week where you eat these unrefined carbs, and then go back to eating a massive bowl of sweet, sugary ass cereal, and you'll realize straight away how fast you drop in energy levels afterwards, okay? So the benefit is that you'll steadily release insulin, you have a slow, steady release of hunger, so there's no massive spikes, which doesn't increase cravings, and you feel a lot fuller for longer as well. So it's definitely something that you want to be implementing, okay? Now, there's a lot of studies as well that have gone on this process as well. So, for example, the comparison between white bread and brown bread found that there's a significantly higher spike in blood glucose and insulin when it comes to white bread. Another study on the glycemic index and insulin response. So foods that are high GI, like I mentioned, like white bread and white rice, cause quick spikes in blood glucose and insulin, while low GI foods like whole grains, legumes result in a more gradual rise, okay? So this is backed up. And of course, this is very common among the clients that I work with as well. Having these diets high in refined carbs increase the chance of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome as well, while eating whole grains were associated with improved insulin sensitivity and reduced chance of metabolic syndrome, okay? So just to conclude, these refined carbs causes massive spikes in insulin. Unrefined, low GI foods cause a much more stable rise, and it doesn't lead to a crash either, okay? So reducing your intake of those refined carbs can be very, very helpful for you, for energy levels, for mood, and of course helping you maintain low insulin levels and even helping you with your weight loss journey.